Misogyny, shown in over 20 countries, includes the books on abortion, on rape, and now on mass hysteria. Finalists for the Deutsche Börse and the Krasner Krause Awards, and winners of the Image VV and Paris Photo Best Book of the Year. Her work is in collections such as the Centre Pompidou, the FRAC, Photomuseum Winterthur, Photo Élysée, and the MACBA. Laia has received the National Photography Award in 2023, the Paul Hoff Award, the Magnum Foundation Grant, and the Visionary Award. And we are going to talk about a very visionary book, by the way, which is entitled On Mass Hysteria, but it's actually the genesis of the whole huge project that we've been working for so many years, History on Misogyny. And I was particularly intrigued. First of all, thank you for this super important work. As a feminist, I'm very sensible and sensitive to these themes. And I was wondering, because we are probably through the bias of Freud and all the patriarchal psychoanalysis that we've been through, I always associated hysteria to a kind of like individual moment in one's life. And actually there is this very hilarious movie that kind of seems to reduce to the fact that, oh, women are hysterical, so we just invented a vibrator and everyone will be fine. So I was very intrigued by this mass aspect, so the collectivity element of the project. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for inviting me. It's a very difficult book to explain in 15 minutes. I'll do my best. I needed 7 years and a 400 pages book, so let's see. So basically, I was in Nepal and I was doing a research about menstruation myths, and I came across this article that was, the headline was Mass Hysteria Case in a School in Nepal. And I heard about hysteria, never heard about mass hysteria. I read about it. And basically, all these teenager girls were fainting, were having, like, shaking, were having fits. So this idea of hysteria, but in a class, all together, and apparently with no biological medical explanation. I do a little bit of research, and I found around 300 cases only in Nepal. I do more research, and I found hundreds and hundreds of cases all over the world since 1400 until 2023. So I was shocked. I was also confused. A lot of information came from conspiracy theories or from fiction. So I wrote, my research. I go to the medical analysis. I go to the papers. I try to understand. And yeah, Western medicine doesn't really answer, at the beginning at least, why this is happening. I have this neurologist telling me, hormones. I'm like, well, no. And of course, yeah, traditionally we see hysteria as a psychological individual, as you say very well, analysis, but this is happening in groups, and it's happening mostly in girls, and it's happening all over the world for so many years. So at some point I come across to one theory from anthropology perspective that says that this could be a proto-language of protest, meaning women could have been unconsciously to a point been having this interconnection and communication, bodily reacting to oppression in different circumstances all over the world across history. And that's how everything started.
So if just to make sure that I understand correctly, it's kind of like a phenomenon that starts maybe within 1 or 2 or 3 individuals, and then it gets contagious, and it's a mixture between a performance, a protest, and a real malaise, physical malaise of a group of women that have been under real psychophysical stress.
So one thing that I have learned today, or like on all this process, is that I don't know how to answer that question, but no one knows. And this project is a visualization of the different interpretations we have been doing about this phenomenon. Some of them very misogynistic, like they are trying to get attention, or they are making it up, or And some of them, you know, from a Western perspective, trying to analyze without really the nuance and sensitivity that many of these stories need. For example, one of the biggest stories happens in Cambodia, where thousands of women faint in factories where they make our clothes every year. And that's one of the anthropological theories, no? This might be them reacting to the working conditions that we are imposing to them. But of course, if you talk to them, many of these factories are built on the top of the killing fields of the Pol Pot genocide. And there is a theory that says that it could be a reenactment of the transgenerational trauma. And when you talk to them, I talk to them, they say they might be possessed. So one thing that I have learned is to be more critical to this Western medicine perspective, but also to this white feminist perspective, which I have to learn. And to also understand, to listen to them and observe. And as I say, this is not documented what happened, and it's not going to tell you why it happens, but it's going to tell you that it happens, and it's presenting you many elements that you can put together.
Yeah, it's very important what you said about the white feminist perspective, because when I looked at the book, of course, I could, from a kind of like history of art point of view, I could find some reference, for example, to Barbara Kruger, how she uses found images and futura, bold red text to really interpolate the viewer and have a kind of direct dialogue with their spectator, but also Stephanie Ursler, who was an American feminist based in Rome, and she made this book in the 70s called An Album of Violence, where she basically documented the increase of violence against women in the 70s in Italy, not by victimizing the victims, but really trying to underline in a sort of kind of Hannah Arendt way the banality of evil and the absurdity of violence. Like, for example, she wanted very expensive shoes. So that's sort of like how it works in the male mentality that justifies violence. And we know very well that there is no justification to violence. But I think what your research and your project is really something new to us in the Western white feminist world is really this more indigenous perspective as well, and narratives and beliefs that I think completely twist and add a lesser known element. And also how, because they have a much deeper relationship with everything that is spiritual as opposed to us. And this is very powerful in the book.
Yeah, so the basically are 68 cases that are composed by many cases, but there are 3 big cases, the one in Cambodia, one in Mexico, and one in the States, that, of course, this book comes from an exhibition, no? From a show that was first show at Élysée in Switzerland and in Finland, and it's going to be now at Le Bal in January. And this comes from the space, no? And in the space I have video, I have sound, and it's a very installative kind of exhibition compared to the previous chapters. So when I have to translate it into the book, it was a big challenge. So for example, one of the cases happens in Mexico, where all these indigenous teenagers come from many rural places in Mexico. They are inside of this boarding school that is very Catholic, very repressive. It works like a total institution. And they, for few months, 6 months, they could not walk. 600 of them could not walk. And we don't know biologically why. But of course, when you research the case from a sociological or anthropological perspective, and even a psychological perspective, for instance, they have to wear the same uniform, they have to cut their hair in the same way, they put a number in their arm, they lose the contact with their people, and they are forbidden to speak their native language. And I come from Catalonia, I come from Barcelona, so for me, the political connection of the language is very present. So it took me 3 years to translate the audios from the exhibition into Tlapaneco, which is an indigenous language, because for me it was very important that Tlapaneco was present in the exhibition as a political action. In the book, it's a little bit written, and it's small. It's just, because, of course, I want you to understand also what it says. And text, as you know, is very present. But every element around every decision, it has been also a learning process for me to decolonize my feminism to a point, because there's still a long way to go, like a long way to go. But at least in a collaboration with anthropologists and as you say, open it my perspective to spirituality, which is something I've never been very close to. And actually, the answers made more sense from the animistic perspective than from great theoreticals that I was talking to.
Yeah, that's very fascinating. And also, your project made me think from a photographic point of view. There are a few experiments in the 19th century, for example, the collaboration between Darwin and Oscar Raylander, when they did when basically Darwin commissioned him to illustrate his book on the expression of emotions in men and animals, and how through portraiture, but also through images from the Salpêtrière, they were really trying to study the physiognomy of the emotions of people on their face, but also to this idea, very forensic, dangerous idea by Cesare Lombroso, who did this very problematic book on the criminal women, La Donna Criminale, which, I mean, of course, now we look at it with different eyes, and of course it's mind-blowing, but these tropes, both visually, historically, and politically, have built a lot of propaganda that hopefully also, thanks to projects like yours, we are trying to deconstruct.
Yeah, I mean, when we say hysteria, and especially being in Paris today, we all go to those images, and it was very interesting process to understand how to photograph them, if I wanted to photograph them or to not photograph them. So, as I work in the previous projects, every series within the book or the chapter has a different intention. We have black and white screen print metaphors that are mostly objects connected to their testimonies. We have these light boxes in the exhibition that here are these posters connected to the anthropological perspective. And then the collages that you mentioned, both for the research but also for the posters, are connected to a commentary that I do on the way that it's archival and it's appropriation, on the way that we have been documenting and representing them. But then there is one series that comes from the video piece from the exhibition, which is basically a visualization of this theory that this could be a way of protesting, which combines actual women protesting all over the world for the last decade, plus women having hysterical, I cannot say the name because even the name is very political and I have to choose one and I don't know which one to choose one, but it's called mass psychogenic illness. That's one way to call it. But this mass hysteria phenomenon, what I do in this yellow series that you can see here is that I combine photographs of the actual protests with photographs of the mass hysteria phenomenon, so you don't know when is one thing or when is the other, and they merge. So for me, it's been a lot of visual analysis and intervention and appropriation and critical commentary on the way we understand rage, anger, sadness, frustration, oppression, pain, and the body, no? And that's why this visually looks different than before, because it has this intention. And also doing collage, a lot of handmade elements that I've done is not in my normal methodology. So that's also this kind of folders that you see here, that it also translates from the exhibition in a different way.
Wow, thank you
so much. Super easy book to talk about in 5 minutes, as you can see.
No, thank you. I really look forward to the exhibition in Le Bal. And I thank you very much for your time and your work. You're going to be signing the book.
I'm running because it's late.
At 4 at delpire, which is J3, the booth. But if you have any questions, maybe there is time for one or two. if you're not shy?
The book is both in English. There's a version in English and a version in French, so you can, because Dawi is not here, but the book is here. And thank you.
Thank you very
I have
much.
just one question.
Yeah.
I have one question. Do you understand? Okay, that's good.
Maybe I have one last
Okay.
question. Sorry. So all these chapters are please correct me if I'm wrong. Attempts to not justify but kind of deconstruct or at least examine the reason behind misogyny.
That's so. Just for you to understand, the book is organized by these folders that show you the research that has been done on each case of these 68 cases, plus these 3 cases that I go in depth. The ones I go in depth, I visualize them with 3 different types of series, both text and images and archive, from the different perspectives: anthropology, sociology, psychology, media, When you look at this, you have to put the pieces together. Some of them are about working environment oppression. Some of them are about religion and indigenous and colonization oppression. The one in the States, it's very particular and very interesting too. And there is a component of internet and TikTok and social media that is also part of it. And I'm just basically having a lot of conversations. There is a lot of text interviews and introductions with experts on the subject, which is very niche, which I don't necessarily agree with them.
That's important to say.
It's very important, and I didn't know if I had to explain it, but I think it's obvious in my questions. We don't have the answer, which is an interesting thing to give it to the people, because then you can also put your mind together. I normally try to control for many years what I wanted people to think about my work and the people that is inside the work. And it's been a very long, complex process, and it still is, to let it go. And this is probably the biggest one that I let go. And I just wanted you to, for a second, switch the perspective you might have, an impromptu when you just think about it, and be open to listen to what other people think about it, because it's actually fascinating to think about 100 women fainting all together, because no reason. But that's the point. What it means, no reason. No reason, because biology is what it has to explain everything. And now I'm getting a little bit super natural. But, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.